You're listening to Now I've Heard Everything, conversations with the icons of our time.
People would prefer to think that we were, psychotic schizophrenics. And they've said that to our face a number of times, but they don't want to say it's multiple personality.
The Troops for Truddi Chase. Today on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson. The medical term is dissociative identity disorder. More popularly, it's called multiple personality disorder. A woman named Truddi Chase became the public face of the disorder in the late 1980s when she wrote an autobiography in which she spelled out details of the 92 distinct personalities living in her. She said it was the result of sustained sexual abuse when she was a child at the hands of her stepfather. And she began referring to her personalities as the troops. Her book, which became a bestseller, was called When Rabbit Howls. Chase's co-author was her hypnotherapist, Dr. Robert Phillips. He was with her the day I first met the troops in 1987, and in the conversation you're about to hear, you will in fact hear some of Truddi Chase's personalities.
Come back with us now as we relive a little piece of our cultural history on Now I've Heard Everything. This interview is from Bill Thompson's 30-year archive. Enjoy.
So here now, from 1987, Dr. Robert Phillips and the Troops for Truddi Chase.
If I did not know that it was truth, it sounds like fiction. Are there people who don't believe that it's a true story?
We feel that there probably will be, because the normal thing to do when you hear about child abuse is to, whether it's happening to you or you only hear about it, is to deny instantly.
And Bill, the whole concept of abuse is hard for people to take, but the concept of multiple personality is even harder to take. It boggles our mind. It's difficult for us to understand how more than one person can live in the body of one person.
There are many people who doubt that concept. Are there not people who think that the troops must be possessed somehow, possessed of the devil if they're of that religious ilk?
Yes. The lay public, there are people who find it very difficult to believe or want to find alternative explanations because they don't want to deal with the fact that intense sexual abuse creates this kind of problem, as well as other forms of abuse. I think there's a lot of disagreement in the professional community about the reality of multiple personalities. But there is a body of growing literature. There is research that's being done. There's research that's being done in the Washington area, which convinces me that multiple personality is a phenomenon. And, of course, my work with the troops has convinced me that multiple personality exists, and, indeed, there are 92 personalities which share the body that we call Truddi Chase.
Most often when the denial issue comes up, people would prefer to think that we were, psychotic schizophrenics. And they've said that to our face a number of times. And we just say, well, yes, this multiple personality bit has been denied by any number of, misdiagnoses. Any number. They call it a lot of different things. But they don't want to say it's multiple personality.
What is the difference between schizophrenia and multiple personality?
The break with reality. We are very firmly rooted in reality. We have no difficulty now that we've had very good therapy living simultaneously in our world and in the world you live in. Now you, on the other hand, and no offense, probably couldn't live in our world. It's not easy.
I agree with the troops about the definition. Of course, to define schizophrenia would take much longer time than we have. But basically what happens is that people are dealing with things in an unrealistic way. They are hallucinating. In other words, what they are talking about really isn't happening. The troops are very much grounded in reality. There are separate realities, which is hard for people to understand. It's hard for me to understand. It's hard for most people to completely understand.
As we were going through the therapy process, we had a journal. And we'd fill up one journal and go out and get another. Well, I hate to tell you how many journals we've got now over the years. But what we did was to write things down exactly as they were happening to us. And somebody did come along at one point in time and say, well, listen, why don't you say it seems to be that such and such happened? And we kept insisting no, because within the human mind, for a multiple, for us anyway, this is the way it happened.
Why do you refer to yourself as the troops?
We call ourselves the troop formation. There are so many of us. Individually, we all have separate names, but as a group, we refer to ourselves as the troop formation.
And just like the troops...
Because we're in a battle.
They're in the battle. They have been fighting for survival. And most of them came into being in order to protect the others who are being abused. Multiple personality is an amazing, a very creative defense mechanism, a survival mechanism against very early onset severe abuse.
I've talked to other people about your book in anticipation of your coming in, and a lot of the reaction that I've been getting is, well, we all have different personalities. I'm a different person before my parents and than I am before my kids, and I'm a different person at work than I'm at the YMCA after work. It's very different, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because it's just you, whether you're in front of your parents or before the PTA or what have you. With us, and you remember everything that you do, more or less. With us, for instance, after this interview, the different ones of us who speak to you, and you may not notice all the changes, each one of us will have our own individual snatches of memory of this interview. Now, later on, we may all get together and kind of share and say, gee, he was really a neat guy, or he did his homework or whatever. But immediately after we leave this interview, there will be those brief snatches for each one of us, separately.
Yes, Bill, you and I go through a lot of mood changes during the day, but there's continuity there. We always know that we were there. We might have been a grouch in the morning and happy-go-lucky at night, the life of the party later on, but we have knowledge of each of those three mood states. The troops don't have that. And they share a lot more, but when they first came in to see me, they didn't even have knowledge of each other. They just had these little slivers of time, which were their memories.
How is it possible to... You've been seeing Dr. Phillips for 6 years? 7?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And you're approximately 50 years old.
We guess so.
So approximately 43, 44 years you survived, or you made do, you went and bought groceries, you drove a car, you had jobs. A lot of people are going to wonder, how did you manage?
We all managed without knowing of the existence of the other one. Miss Wonderful, for instance, and we refer to her as having one brain cell clacking, because she's not an intellectual type. In fact, for her, sex does not exist. That's the way she gets through the world. If sex existed in Miss Wonderful's world, she couldn't cope. She just thinks that everything is lovely and beautiful. She gives great parties. Well, there are other things that she doesn't do. She's never been in bed with a man. She has never had a child. She has never been married. She has never typed at a typewriter. She gave her contribution to the book, but she never actually typed a page. In fact, we type anywhere from, 27 to 122 words a minute, depending on who's doing the typing.
I think that's one thing that most people will find, what I found particularly fascinating, is that you physically are different. You change.
Yes, definitely. We were telling someone this morning that our daughter likes us not to eat chocolate ice cream in public, because if anybody here sees a chocolate ice cream cone, one of the children will shoot forth and the face is all full of chocolate.
Something else I wondered about, and forgive me, so many of my questions may seem so basic and elementary.
No, they don't.
No.
Why do some of you have different nationalities and ethnic backgrounds? Why? I mean, I think most people could accept it if all of you were white Anglo-Saxon women. Why are some of you men or of different backgrounds, do you suppose?
Well, for instance, Mean Joe, and after we found out within the troop formation that he was black, we called him laughingly Mean Joe Green, and he doesn't mind. Mean Joe protects the children. We wonder in our minds if because the stepfather was white, Mean Joe had to be black in order to protect the children. And you know, it's a very, very funny thing. But different ones of us would notice at times that we'd be out in the street and we would see a black man or a woman coming along and immediately sense a kind of bonding with that person without even exchanging a word, and we never knew why. Once Mean Joe came forth and sort of made himself known to us individually, we began to understand why we would sense that bonding. Whereas if you see a white man come along the street, ooh, there is that instant, I'm scared.
Were there times when you were writing this that you were scared?
We were all scared while we wrote that book. The pages got wet, wet. Sometimes. What was so difficult about it was if there are a man and a woman touring the country right now, and they wrote a book together, a very famous couple, and they said how difficult it was for their marriage to be writing a book together. Aha. Picture what we went through writing this book together, and some of us had not even visited much. When we started to really share vicious memories, it was difficult. It was horrendous. And then to have to cooperate. I mean, we didn't all even like each other, and we were just getting to know each other. Did you ever meet somebody at a party and you say, hey, I don't like this guy at all? And yet you've got to cooperate with him. But we did it.
In a fascinating way. Has the public's perception of multiple personalities been overly tainted by Sybil and
I think so. In fact, when the troops came to me initially, I had received a referral for a woman who had been sexually abused but had very little memory. And I didn't even entertain the thought of multiple personality because I didn't see any dramatic changes. I was seeing what I thought was one woman sitting in front of me trying to remember. And it was only after being in therapy for a while when they began to trust me to see that I wasn't out to harm in any way, they began to let themselves be known. But even then, I had a lot of skepticism. I was thinking in terms of different sides of the personality because they didn't come out and announce themselves. In the movies, and even in the case literature, someone comes out and says, hello there, my name is Susie Jane, and hello there, my name is Sam. It doesn't happen that with the troops, and we're beginning to discover that there are many different ways that people with multiple personalities present.
I think that's what makes it so hard for people to believe.
It is.
They want to see a single kind of thing, and then they can believe that.
We videotaped a lot of our initial sessions. I was teaching at the time full-time at the University of Maryland, training people to be marriage and family therapists, and we developed training tapes. Now I go back and look at the initial tapes, and I see, at that point, I didn't see the changes, because the changes are subtle. There are changes in look, changes in voice inflection, not the kind of dramatic changes. You have to look carefully. You have to be open to the possibility.
If I'm not being too forward, have I spoken to more than one of the troops this morning?
I don't know how to answer that, except to tell you one thing. This morning when I got out of bed, I had a sore throat. Like for the last hour. Nobody here has felt that sore throat. I'm feeling it again now. me sitting here right now.
Bill, I have seen more than one come out during this interview.
It's very subtle.
It is.
Somebody told us that he said somebody would have to know you all for a long, long time.
It's almost as if they decided to camouflage. And that's another part of the troop formation. There is such a need for protection.
Different things trigger, too.
Mm-hmm.
Just different things. Like, we were doing something this morning, I forget what it was. Oh, that lady turned that bug over and set it on its belly so it could crawl, and she was nice to it.
Mm.
And we said, oh, just like we do.
Yeah.
You know, we don't step on the bugs. We pick them up and let them fly.
Mm-hmm.
Is 92 the end, or will there be more troops?
We don't know. We all put our names down on the paper and try to describe to him, to Dr. Phillips, what each one of us was all about. We believe at this point in time that 92 is the final number, but who's to say for sure?
Yes, we don't know. We don't know what will happen. And the one thing we do know is that the troops have chosen a manner of resolution, I guess you'd call it, that is different also from the stereotypes. Most of what we've read about and have seen talk in terms of integration. In other words, you mush everyone, as they put it, into one. As I worked with the troops, one thing they taught me was that because of the special circumstances of the coming out, as it were, there's a great validity in their staying around. They're staying with us because they are finding health in multiplicity. That's also something hard for many people to swallow.
We all have different capabilities in so many different areas. And we heard that one multiple who chose integration, she lost some of the group's capabilities when they all got mushed. And we don't want to do that. Dr. Phillips has taught us that we are all individually unique and valuable to the group. We don't want to get mushed. We just want to make a contribution.
Truddi Chase died in 2010. She was 74. Now you can get your copy of When Rabbit Howls by the Troops for Truddi Chase by tapping the link in our show notes, by clicking on the link in the description below if you're listening to this on YouTube, or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. Heardeverything.com is where you can also hear my 1989 interview with the woman who was the model for the movie The Three Faces of Eve, Chris Costner Sizemore.
There are no gaps anymore. And I know who I am, and I like the person I am, and I feel comfortable being one person.
And my 1997 interview with the woman whose own struggles with mental illness became the hit movie Girl Interrupted, Susanna Kaysen.
People who haven't had experience with mental illness don't understand how ambivalent the person who's going through it can feel. You know, people say, was it a good experience or a bad experience for you being in the hospital? And that question just doesn't have a yes-no answer. It's both.
And of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, the battle over reproductive rights is hotter than it ever has been. So we'll revisit my 2006 interview with a woman who devoted much of her adult life to fighting for reproductive rights, the former head of NARAL, Kate Michelman.
I'm not pro-abortion. I really have been an advocate for the dignity of women, the right of women to determine when and under what circumstances to bring children into the world.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.